Hey, oh, good evening, everyone. What's up? I just ate a satisfying meal and topped it off with a measly dessert. This is Mr. Hata speaking. Previously, I did the final part to the top 45 worst SpongeBob episode, second edition, and today will be the third and final part to the long version of the top 45 worst SpongeBob episodes. This should be the last part, so let's get going. So, we have completed 37 episodes. We have 8 left to go. There's a lot to talk about in these 8 episodes. Number 8 is Little Yellow Book from Season 9, March 2nd, 2013. Just like the Krabby Chronicle from Season 6, 2008, there's a lot to cover in this one episode. My assumption is that this one was one of the very few episodes that aired after my first countdown. I'm sorry that this is only at number 8, but it's time to summarize the Season 9 atrocity. Squidward's happy that there is no one at the Krusty Krab, and he's the only person in sight. Well, that's what he thinks. When he's taking a break, a customer just pops out of nowhere just like that. Not only that, there are many hungry customers that just came out of nowhere. A plot hole right there. Squidward yells to SpongeBob to get back to work. However, SpongeBob is in a barrel screwing around doing who knows what. Squidward has no choice but to yell at SpongeBob even louder for a second time, and that's when SpongeBob finally takes notice and comes out of the barrel. Apparently, he was writing his diary. Since when did SpongeBob carry a diary? He makes the Krabby Patties in a way that is never ever seen again, randomness, and serves all the customers. This is all taken care of, so what's next? Yeah, the plot is right after this. Squidward takes a high interest in that diary. Well, so would I. That was supposed to be the Little Yellow Book. Wait a minute. This book's blue. Oh yeah, the episode is called Little Yellow Book because SpongeBob is yellow and that was his book. Enough mushy talk. However, before Squidward can even read just a word, open it, SpongeBob quickly takes the diary away from him. I'll be taking that, thank you. Still wanting to read SpongeBob's diary, Squidward has a devious plan. Excuse me. In order to distract SpongeBob, Squidward gives him a fake special delivery, which is nothing but a little ketchup packet in a bag. SpongeBob is quick enough to realize that Squidward has made a big mistake and throws it into the garbage can. Once again, out of nowhere, Patrick emerges from the garbage and says, "Oh boy, ketchup packet! That'll go well with this dirty diaper!" What? Where on earth did Patrick come from? What the devil was Patrick doing in there? That's unsanitary. Why is he even in there? How long has he been in there for? I really don't know what to say after I saw this scene. I was pretty much speechless is all I can say. When SpongeBob returns, Squidward still wants to read more of the diary. To distract SpongeBob this time, Squidward tells him to fetch a watch in the bathroom. When reading the diary, Squidward accidentally laughs at a big fat meanie. To make trouble avoidable, Squidward tells him that he was just reading a diary. He is told to tell more, which is just mean-spirited right there. Apparently, when SpongeBob sees Plaid, he can't help but cluck like a chicken. Wow. SpongeBob needs a break. Meanwhile, the customers and Squidward read more and more of the diary. That is what's wrong with these episodes. And they all laugh. The name of SpongeBob's spatula is Fifi? Hey, wait a minute. I thought it was called Spat. That's what's wrong with these new episodes. BS and randomness. That's all it is. What kind of name is Fifi? Sounds like the name of a crybaby. Then dumb old Patrick, who has no respect for even his own so-called best friends, laughs obnoxiously, which was rude, very rude, and insultive. He asks SpongeBob to make a Krabby Patty with good old Fifi. If SpongeBob hears the anthem of Bikini Bottom, he will dance around in his underpants. Indeed, he really does, and cries when he finds out that was Squidward who's reading the diary all along. Squidward, how could you? How could he? Everyone immediately thinks Squidward is a big jerk. Squidward, being remorseless, feels fine when SpongeBob's being a big crybaby, which he is. Yeah, what a baby, what a crybaby. Read all about it. Jerk reads diary. Fry Cook devastated. Squidward, who has intelligence unlike everyone else in this episode, ignores everything. Here is where the episode gets in the wrong. Very wrong. Squidward's denied from a taxi just for being some diary reader. Diary thief, jerk, secret stealer? Billy, stay away from the diary reader. Do you know what's in the Bikini Bottom? Shut up. Just shut up already. That's enough. That's enough already. Do you ever know when to shut up? Grow up. Stop looking down on people. Squidward ignores them once again, calling them morons, which one may find agreeable. From reading one's diary, his house has been repossessed. Now he's homeless, and out of nowhere it rains, then it thunders, hurting Squidward. That's a plot hole. That was not cool either. Squidward is arrested for being a diary thief. Everyone just throws things at him. Diary reader, says Patrick. Well, you read it too. Yes, Patrick, Squidward is quite right. You read the diary too, so just shut up already and think about what you just did. What on earth is wrong with you? Don't you dare think that you were in the wrong, because you were. Yes, you were, Patrick. You're a thief and a liar. Leave that poor guy alone and do something else like beat your meat. You already have enough problems as it is. Go back to beating your meat or doing something else, you fat pink starfish. Go in with SpongeBob. While everything is throw things at Squidward, because that's how uncool they are. SpongeBob arrives. Squidward begs for forgiveness, but SpongeBob's diary was only his work diary, which became a bestseller that quick. Squidward reads SpongeBob's personal diary, saying that it was so worth it. The end. Wow, these characters are hypocrites. They read the diary, then all bully Squidward after they know that it belonged to SpongeBob. If they read the diary, then they deserve to be punished, especially Patrick. This is one of the best examples of how the townspeople have no likability whatsoever. This is not the only time either. Squidward suffers over some diary, all over a diary. Seriously, a diary? How can he lose his house over a lame diary? It's just a diary, for Pete's sake. Squidward had every right to do what he did. SpongeBob deserved what he got. It was payback time. He has caused more misery to Squidward than Squidward ever has to him. Also, how can a diary be a bestseller that fast? You need an editor and all that. You can't just become a bestseller in one day. As for the citizens, move on and get a life, you losers. You don't even deserve to be called citizens. That's how bad you are. I have respect for Squidward, but none for you. They deserve to be executed. I've had enough of your unacceptable behavior already. As for everyone else who did the rant on this episode, Squidward is likable. You're not likable for saying he's not likable. Number 7 is an episode that everyone in the world hates, I'm sure. One would expect this to be at numbers 1, 2, 3, or 4, but it will stay at number 7, because that's an appropriate spot. It's A Pal for Gary from Season 7, January 2nd, 2010. Yes, I watched it on TV when it came out. I hear it's not much to say about this episode. SpongeBob thinks that Gary wants to go for a walk, but can't because he has to work. Meanwhile, Gary watches TV. His enjoyment, his only enjoyment. A responsible pet owner wants Krabby Patties, but SpongeBob says he can't. However, Mr. Krabs asks SpongeBob to make 2 Krabby Patties for a responsible pet owner. SpongeBob calls Gary, but no reply. Gary does nothing but sit on the couch and watch TV all day. not getting exercise. SpongeBob is sent and asks Mr. Krabs if he can leave early but must come 5 hours early to work the next day. On his way home, he spots a gypsy with saggy breasts who seem to be selling a pet. I meant to say pets, plural. SpongeBob wants to get a pal for Gary so he won't be so lonesome. Yup, that's where the name of the episode comes from, a pal for Gary. He wants a pal for Gary. Wait, since when was she even there? The gypsy lady with saggy breast, that thing looks repulsive. Who on earth is she? Is she a monster? Well, is she a stranger? Well, she warns and attempts to warn SpongeBob that they are not as they appeared. In other words, the so-called quote-unquote pets are dangerous. Why bother? She asks herself. They never listen. SpongeBob steals one of the pets and brings it to Gary, naming it Puffy Fluffy. When so-called Puffy Fluffy, Gary attempts to be nice to it. It is dangerous and must hate pets, which it does, most likely. When Gary attempts to get away from that so-called Puffy Fluffy, I don't even know why is that name, SpongeBob does not have a clue what's going on and tells him to be friendly. SpongeBob's enchiladas got cold in a second, in a heartbeat, just like that, and doesn't even notice that Puffy Fluffy is a monster, even though he was right there. Poor old Gary has to share a bed with the monstrous Puffy Fluffy. SpongeBob quickly falls asleep, and that's when there is massive destruction. Puffy Fluffy somehow involved into this giant, hideous monster, destroying everything inside. SpongeBob is unaware of this due to sleeping in deep sleep, even though his house is being destroyed. The main target for Puffy Fluffy is Gary the Snail. Gary must fight for his life. When SpongeBob wakes up the following morning, he sees all the damage and thinks it was all caused by Gary because his assumption was that Gary was jealous of the new guest, even though he wasn't. Just when Gary was about to be eaten, SpongeBob tells him to put Puffy Fluffy down. Wait a minute! Puffy Fluffy is the one who should be told to put Gary down. How on earth is he not able to see that? Gary was unable to be eaten by Puffy Fluffy. That, however, stops Puffy Fluffy from eating Gary. But then he tries to eat SpongeBob. SpongeBob says, "Bad, Gary, bad. You're in a lot of trouble, mister." Just when SpongeBob is about to be eaten, Gary comes to the rescue, making Puffy Fluffy leave in agony. SpongeBob tells him to come back and is still mad at Gary. Gary, what do you have to say for yourself? Gary is forced to come to work with SpongeBob and is free labor to Mr. Krabs. The end. Puffy Fluffy barely got what it deserved. As a punishment, it should have been executed. And that would have been a perfect ending right there. No, it's not SpongeBob's fault in this episode like everyone else says. It's that old gypsy lady with saggy breast fault. Dude, if she knows that these creatures are dangerous, then why on earth is she selling them to people? Those things should be illegal. Couldn't Puffy Fluffy have been killed already? It would have been so cool if it did. As for that ugly gypsy saggy ones, how dare she sells dangerous things? Number one, it's illegal. And number two, where on earth did those monstrous creatures come from? I ask the same question over and over again. Why was she selling an illegal pet if they're harmful to others? Is she trying to hurt people, even though she seems like he is not? What on earth was she thinking or smoking? She must have been on drugs or something. How many drugs was she on? 100? It was all her fault in this episode, not SpongeBob's like everyone else said, which is very redundant. My last words for this episode is that I'm sorry this was not as one would have expected. Number 6 is Karate Star from Season 7, July 2010. The Season 7 episode from over 4 years ago is a great example of how unlikable Patrick Star has been throughout the many years. SpongeBob does karate and Patrick rescues him from being hurt. SpongeBob thanks him and offers him a favor. Patrick is taught karate because he wanted to. However, it gets out of control, way out of control. SpongeBob says he's unteachable. Then Patrick chops everything perfectly from out of nowhere and without training. How does Patrick have that ability all of a sudden? Randomness. They make everything look so darn easy in the real world. One vital lesson that was taught to Patrick from SpongeBob is that With power comes responsibility, which is an accurate statement. Well said by you-know-who. Does Pat listen? Let's see. Let's take a look, shall we? The answer is no, absolutely not. Patrick didn't learn a thing. Here's what the episode becomes ugly. Patrick comes to the Krusty Krab, causes massive destruction. At an ice cream parlor, he steals all the ice cream with a karate chop. After that, he does karate chops everywhere, destroying the entire city. He even chopped the muffin displaying TVs. Yeah, he has no self-control whatsoever. After destroying everything in sight, he thinks that he killed his boyfriend, SpongeBob. However, SpongeBob was still alive. Hooray! Wow, he's still alive. Boo! Hiss! Big deal. Patrick chops off his own arm but regenerates. There's a second Patrick who chops everything. The end. Patrick, what can I say about this cause of massive destruction? This is how untrustable Patrick is. One of these days he's going to kill someone with his bad behavior. Not only did he cause thousands of dollars of damage, he almost killed his best friend. What made this season 7 episode from almost 4.5 years ago fall completely flat on his face was that Patrick didn't get punished. Why isn't the so-called quote-unquote karate star Pink Fatty getting punished? He committed a crime, a serious crime. What he did wrong, very wrong. He is so bad that he does not deserve to regenerate. Why did everything have to regenerate? How was he unable to control that crazy chop? He was not having that problem in all the other episodes. One solution was that he could have been exiled to the land of nowhere, or he should have never gotten a new arm again. Patrick never does karate again, and that was like Squid Defense. Even Squidward's karate was infinitely better than Patrick's, but he wasn't destroying everything like Patrick would. Oh yeah, why does Squidward have to get punished, but Patrick always gets off scot-free most times? That's not fair. Extremely unfair. It's sickening. Not only is Patrick brainless, he's dangerous. He needs to be karate chopped by Squidward. This episode was bad enough to make the top 5 territory, but was almost as bad as the others. 40 bad episodes down, only 5 atrocities left to go. Many episodes were close, but 5 is 5. These atrocities have almost every right, if not to be part of the countdown. I apologize if these episodes are in the top 5, but they have shown such mean spirit that they are where they belong. It is time for the top 5 worst SpongeBob episodes, part 2, second edition. It's time for the final 5 of the 45. 4/5, 8/9 done. 1/9 left to go. Number 5 is Stanley SquarePants from Season 5, 2007. Spoilers. This has to be the worst Season 5 episode of all time. Other Sponge SquarePants, eh? SpongeBob has received a package from his no-good cousin Stanley because he was sent out home from being unable to hold a job and being able to take care of things. So what on earth does Stanley SquarePants do? Well, now let's see. He breaks the food, the toilet, and even the TV. What? That doesn't make any sense. How does one break something just like that? How does one break food just like that? When Squidward sees him, he decides to move and does. What? That's BS. If he moved for good, he would not be in all the other episodes. Does Squidward move right back after the end of this episode? Complete randomness that is never ever seen again. If it was that easy for Squidward to move out, then why didn't he just move out all those other times? Then SpongeBob meets Sandy, the sponges that is. When stupid Stanley is dumb enough to bite Sandy's suit, it sends her right up. Stanley SquarePants is good at nothing. Absolutely nothing. He's got no skills whatsoever. He's useless. Utterly useless. At the Krusty Krab, Mr. Krabs calls SpongeBob his moneymaker and asks him how he will make money today. Mr. Krabs, is that all you care about? Is that all you value SpongeBob for? Money? Stanley gets hired by being said to be a quote-unquote hard worker by SpongeBob's words. That was a big fat lie just to get him in without trouble and questions asked. Stanley is assigned to work at the cash register, but that was Squidward's job while he's not here, and guess what? This will make you mad. Listen to this. He burnt all the money. To protect Stanley from trouble, SpongeBob says that he was at fault, which puts him on probation. So one more strike and he's out. Meanwhile, stupid Stanley takes photos holding up the line. Consequently, the customers are outraged. When Stanley is destroyed, SpongeBob's spatula, SpongeBob says, "No!" SpongeBob reveals that he was covering Stanley the whole time. Instead of punishing Stanley, he is sent to the chum bucket where he destroys it and is never ever seen again. Stanley can't do anything right. Oh my goodness. How can he be that careless and to destroy everything in sight? Overall, he is among the worst characters I've ever seen in this long-lasting series of randomness. Goodness gracious, he's even worse than Patrick Star and far worse than the citizens of Bikini Bottom. He is far by the most untrustable, useless, unintelligent, weakest, unreliable, careless, laziest, hideous, bland characters I've ever seen in the history of TV. That character deserves to be beaten up brutally. Why didn't he just get thrown in prison, or better yet, get thrown in a rat-infested garbage dump, or even better yet, executed? Better yet, why doesn't he just die in a hole for all we care? He is so useless that he should have been executed immediately. How on earth does he somehow not only break everything, but he's able to not break a camera, but he just breaks everything else he touches? It does not work like that. No wonder why Stanley's father got rid of him. Just one little touch destroys everything. When I saw him burn or blow something in existence, I wanted to strangle him or blow him up. Or push him off a cliff even. How could he have destroyed SpongeBob's spatula that easily? You would have had to really bend it with strength. The easiest way to say this, screw Stanley SquarePants, just screw him. Why couldn't have something bad happen to him? This is very relatable to that atrocious farm pit episode from the Fairly Odd Parents when Timmy's dad killed every plant over a little touch. That's enough of this season 5 episode. Number 4 is Fiasco from season 8 or 9, April 2012. Patrick smells something and is told to go to the Krusty Krab by Mr. Krabs. Mr. Krabs wants a gimmick in order to become profitable. SpongeBob wants a good idea but bugs Squidward and thinks super hard. A man makes a work of art with mustard and ketchup. It's a work of art by Fiasco. That's a work of art. That thing is considered to be a work of art. Ha! If it were that easy and quick, that valuable work of art, I guess it's art, okay. Squidward finds it admirable. However, Mr. Krabs is so uncultured and thinks it's just garbage and attempts to throw it out. But Squidward saves it by explaining that it's not garbage for good reasons and why it's valuable. Mr. Krabs, who's just ever so greedy, wants to quote-unquote price this thing from Squidward, even though Squidward found it first. A man comes out of nowhere and butts in without being invited and rudely says it's not because it's a so-called quote-unquote national treasure. Look, I know this is art, but how on earth is this a national treasure? It was made like 5 minutes ago. Because it has been named the national treasure, even though it's not even close in the slightest, it must be sealed. That thing's gonna eventually spoil, but oh well. Food never lasts forever. Apparently that work of art belongs to the people of Bikini Bottom. What on earth does he mean by that? That was one thing that was never explained. It does not belong to a single person out there. It belongs to nobody. Meanwhile, Plankton wonders why Mr. Krabs is succeeding and plots to steal it. That's when he attempts to steal this time instead of the, you know what, Krabby Patty's secret formula. Out of nowhere, like many times, the police appear and chase Plankton. They go on a big manhunt for Plankton for pretty much the rest of the episode. They stalk him for a while from the movie theater to the grocery store and even all the way far out as the nearly unreachable outer space from extremely high right above everyone. How on earth did the police and Plankton manage to get that far out, all the way there? More effort could have been put in those parts. How on earth did the ruthless police manage to find Plankton everywhere and not have a hard time stalking him? When Plankton is finally back in Bikini Bottom, He wants help from Patrick, but without even bothering to think even just a bit, he almost never does, like never ever, just says that he has nothing to do in the morning. Wait, what? What did he just say? Yes, Mr. Starr, we were listening to you loud and clear. Don't you dare think you were hiding something, because you were not. Excuse me? What you have said does not make sense. It is not understandable. This is not. Plankton is so desperate and out of his mind, he forces SpongeBob to explain why the cops are after him and not Mr. Krabs. Plankton uses a spoon to make SpongeBob behave himself, and that explains why the cops are after him and not Mr. Krabs. And he tells SpongeBob that he is a criminal for no reason at all. That statement was almost thoughtless at the end. A spoon? Seriously, a spoon? Really? A silly spoon? Come on! That's almost never a threat. That's just utter silliness right there. Here's what happens next. One may not believe this, but this is true. Patrick ate the work of art. Yes, Mr. Patrick Starr ate the work of art right in front of them for a fact, and he wasn't even thinking straight. Brain dead. Moron. What? Patrick Starr, you obese. Why, how dare you do such a thing? The police arrive with Squidward, who tells them that they were making a ruckus, in which it most certainly did, especially Patrick. Yes, it was all Patrick's fault this time. Not Plankton. Squidward and Plankton are arrested. Whoa, what the Squidward? Why him? Why did you arrest him? Are you brain dead? No, you dunderheads. He did not do anything. He was just annoyed from his obnoxious neighbors and wanted peace and quiet. Mr. Krabs, where on earth did he even come from? He was not even there to begin with. What's that school bully got to do with this case? He is thanked for clearing the case. Excuse me? Why is Mr. Krabs being thanked? What does he deserve to be thanked? Let's see. I know. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. He didn't even care that his very own employee was in jail. What are you? Who on earth do you think you are? All you ever do with Squidward is treat him like a punchbag or use him for customers. Mr. Krabs' moneymaker SpongeBob has an idea that just might work. It makes money and is an art show. Mr. Krabs charges his customers to see it, and Patrick loves it. The show is the work of art in his stomach and is done by an X-ray. The artist won't paint again and destroys his art, which I don't understand why. Why would he say such a silly thing? The episode ends with Squidward asking for a phone call in prison. This episode really wants to make you blow up. It's that bad. Patrick should have been in prison for what he did. He was a thief, not Plankton, and certainly not Squidward. Why on earth must Squidward always be punished for almost everything for no reason at all? Why must they always pick on him only? What do the police have against him? Do they hate him too? All he wanted was some peace and quiet, something he almost never gets because of his two unfair neighbors. How does Patrick get off scot-free again? He ate that so-called priceless work of art. The police are so unlikable in this series. All they ever do is arrest people for everything. This is just sickening and inhumane. Why did Plankton and Squidward get arrested if Patrick ate the thing? As for Mr. Krabs, he was nothing but a heartless jerk in this episode. All he cared about was his money, and he didn't even care about Squidward, even though he forced Mr. Krabs to keep the thing. The only reason why he kept SpongeBob was to make money. That's the only thing he uses SpongeBob for. Mr. Krabs didn't deserve what he got in this episode. Now we have finally made it to the top 3. These are the top 3 worst SpongeBob episodes, second edition. Number 3 is Tentacle Vision from Season 6 or 7, July 2009. July 19th, I believe. Hey, that stands for TV. Squidward watches TV before 5 a.m. A good show is canceled, but Zeus the Guitar Lord appears out of nowhere, wanting a guitar badly, begging for it. After seeing that Squidward wants his own TV show. At the Krusty Krab, he is so pumped for his new show. The show is called Squidward Chat, which is seen by SpongeBob. He is so excited just from seeing that he wants to be on it too. We can see where this is going. What does he do next? Again, he barges into Squidward's house, and without thinking and caring about Squidward's feelings, just yells, "Squidward, you're on TV, you're on TV! Be quiet! We already know he's on TV! Can't you ever be quiet for once?" And brings that useless, no-good fatty butt buddy named Patrick Star, who just has to be obnoxious the whole episode. Just because he's on TV for everyone to see him behave like a buffoon, big deal. No one cares that you're on TV, Patrick Star, because you're a disgrace to all people. The next thing he does is go back to his home to see that he is not on TV, which makes him so sad. Boo-hoo! With that, he immediately runs back to Squidward's house, where Squidward is unhappy of what's going on. So what does he do next? He licks the camera. Disgusting. Utterly disgusting. Squidward is nice enough to assign the Starfish as the cameraman for the show. SpongeBob was assigned to be the sound man. Why didn't he just kick them out in the first place, one might ask? My assumption is that this is why there's a plot in this episode. This was most likely because there would most likely be nothing to talk about if there was nothing of this. If there was no idiocy, I meant. Consequently, Patrick films by moving the camera up and down, interrupting the show. Upsy daisy, downsy wowsy, upsy daisy, downsy wowsy, upsy daisy, downsy wowsy. Patrick, be quiet! You big crybaby! How old are you? Grow up! SpongeBob is having problems holding the mic. Nope, this yellow sponge can't do anything right either. From his home, Mr. Krabs was so happy to watch the Squidward chat. With his rude manners, he just barges into Squidward's house, screaming at everyone to eat the Krusty Krab, and he wants everyone's money. He dances right in front of the camera, just like an attention whore would. Sandy must have been watching Squidward chat because she barges in and challenges him to a dancing competition. It gets so out of hand that it gets extremely chaotic. Pearl must have been watching Squidward chat too because she thinks that Sandy and Mr. Krabs are lame and is a show-off wannabe who won't shut up about her cheerleading. Plankton was watching too apparently because he just comes out of nowhere, ruining everything with his laser guns and violence, and saying, "Eat at the chum bucket or perish." Squidward, who has had quite enough with everyone's obnoxiousness, orders everyone to leave his house immediately, which was the smartest thing to do in the whole episode. That was the only memorable line in the whole darn episode, or enjoyable part, as it is. Out of nowhere, Larry the Lobster somehow was able to hear the word housewarming, and that attracts many people. Then a rude man barges in and says that everything is fine when it's not. What do you mean it's fine? That's a lie. It is nothing is fine. Squidward is a Squidward show and he's not fine, so therefore nothing is fine in this show. Who do you think you are to say this? You're not Squidward. You're just a rude man. Except for a few random people, and even has the balls to throw out the owner of the house, Squidward. What? You don't do that. You can't do that. How dare you kick him out of his own home? That's his own property. He did nothing wrong. The show is called Squidward's House Party, hosted by guess whom? Squidward was kicked out so he can't. Not SpongeBob, but that obnoxious kid named Zeus the Guitar Lord, the character that was seen in the beginning of the bad episode. His obnoxiousness from below was because of his new guitar. He thanks Squidward because without the show he wouldn't have been able to get that guitar, which he doesn't deserve in the slightest. He was able to get it because of Squidward. Squidward wants everyone to keep it down because he's trying to be quiet or he's trying to sleep. Yeah, who doesn't feel sorry for Squidward? Squidward wants... Why did he have to suffer because of everyone? Excuse me. Everyone, all but Squidward, was in the wrong, very wrong. Why on earth did all the characters have to ruin Squidward's channel just because they want to show off their uncool swag? Second, how could they have been all watching that at the very same time? Is that the only show in Bikini Bottom that they have on their TV? That was absolutely none of their business. None at all. None of their business, and it should have stayed that way. This episode wouldn't have been so bad if the townspeople had behaved themselves and not butted in everything. Seriously, not cool, townspeople. How uncool are you? They had absolutely no business showing up at Squidward's house. That's illegal. In this 2009 episode, all the characters but Squidward were self-centered, self-absorbed wannabes. They were all being a bunch of show-off wannabes this whole time. That's so unprofessional, even more unprofessional than eating raw cookie dough out of a bowl in a professional kitchen where you get fired. This was Squidward's channel, not yours. Go get yourselves beaten up by a monster. Why on earth do you care so much about Squidward's channel? It's none of your business, and it's his channel. It has nothing to do with you, but it's never going to be about you. Not only did they disrespect Squidward's property, they went completely off topic from Squidward chat, just drawing attention to themselves in a bad way. All they do the whole time was act like a bunch of buffoons. They didn't respect Squidward even at the slightest. Question: do they have any manners at all? Nope, not at all. None of them have class. All they care about themselves. For crying out loud, it's not about you. It will never be about you because you suck at everything. It was supposed to be about Squidward. Unlike everyone else in this episode, Squidward had class. He acted professional, and it was his channel was pretty chill. He wasn't talking about himself, and he was being pretty tolerant overall. This episode was kind of a ripoff of Bangeeks from Season 2, 2001. Zeus the Guitar Lord was really uncool. No, he didn't deserve that new guitar even a bit. That no-good little kid thinks he has swag. Wrong. That kid is so loud. Okay, how on earth did he get into Squidward's house party? This doesn't make sense. It was not explained either. Zeus the Guitar Lord just as bad as those many overrated YouTube channels such as PewDiePie and Lohanthony. This doesn't make any sense. Every character in this episode deserves to be thrown in a slammer. Why don't these characters know when to shut up or behave themselves? Number 2 is what may have been an okay choice for number 1, but like many things have to be reconsidered. It has been chosen to be yours, mine, and mine. From Season 7, 2010. At the Krusty Krab, Squidward asks, "May I help you?" And Patrick has a question about the Krabby Kitty meal, which is just a Happy Meal from McDonald's. "Is it cute?" he asks. Squidward responds that it's adorable. SpongeBob whispers to Patrick to get the Krabby Kitty meal, 30% cuter, $1 more than a Krabby Patty, which is a ripoff. It's $4.99. Of course, Patrick can't afford it. "Is this enough?" "No." "Yes, sir," and of course, Patrick throws a big temper tantrum over it. Crybaby, crybaby. To settle the situation, SpongeBob pays for the Krabby Kitty meal with his very own money to share it with Patrick. Shouldn't he get like half off? After all, he works there. When SpongeBob explains what sharing is to Patrick is so arrogant that he thinks he knows everything about sharing. Well, what does he do next? Well, he eats the whole meal right in front of SpongeBob, even when he was told to save some for him. Yeah, all that meal was a little patty, and that was it. What? How on earth is that supposed to be a meal? Wouldn't there be a side drink and perhaps a dessert? All that was a little burger. And how can it cost more than a regular? Remember this episode, Mermaid Man vs. SpongeBob, when there were kids' meals that had fries, juice box, and a toy? That must have been way forgotten because that was in mid-2007 Season 5, so over 3 years before this episode was made. Then Patrick, who is still nothing but a big baby, gets angry just because this meal didn't come with a toy. Wow, Patrick still hasn't grown up after these episodes. Seriously, Pat, just grow up already. When he says that's a ripoff, which is agreeable, and he wants his money back, even though it wasn't his money to begin with, Mr. Krabs makes a toy of a Krabby Patty for the body or base, and straws for the legs and arms. The eyes were pickles, and the mouth was ketchup. What? That's a toy? You call that a toy? You call that thing a toy? It's nothing but a Krabby Patty with condiments. That's food, not a toy. Couldn't that cheap man come up with something else, like making toys out of paper? Regardless of that useless garbage, SpongeBob finds it to be extremely admirable. Just like that, he falls in love with it, just like he did from To Love a Petty from Season 5, which was utterly disgusting. He likes it so much that he coughs up money for that darn fake thing. Making Mr. Krabs very happy due to the fact that all he cares about is money. SpongeBob says that he loves that so-called toy and names it Patty Pal, which isn't a bad name. He beats his meat to it and dances around to it, which really ticks off Patrick, who's just staring at him with jealousy as if he doesn't want him to have it, which he doesn't. Patrick was such a school bully, even to his own quote-unquote best friend. Don't you mean our new toy? It came from the meal that we're sharing. Patrick, you are such an arrogant jerk. He even has the nerve to cop an attitude saying that sharing is the most wonderful thing in the world. Sharing is the most wonderful thing in the world, like dancing with a magical seahorse in a enchanted kelp garden. Patrick, you sure need to be slapped in the face or slapped upside down the head for rudely mocking SpongeBob. Not cool. He was just simply teaching you an important lesson. That's what a real friend would do, and you ignore it just like that. Some friend you are to SpongeBob. You're not even used to SpongeBob at all. SpongeBob gives in, but Patrick refuses to share for the entire day. He even has some nerve to ask us, aren't you supposed to be working? How dare you tell him what to do? Who on earth do you think you are, his boss? That was just a lame excuse to jerk off with a toy all day. Later, SpongeBob really wants to turn, but Patrick says no, maybe tomorrow. He even tells SpongeBob no touching. Let me get this straight. He won't let SpongeBob look at the quote-unquote toy, let alone be near it. What's so great about this toy anyway? It's nothing but a piece of scrap. I mean, SpongeBob thinks that Patrick will be asleep and won't get to play with it. Poor Patrick. However, Patrick beats his meat with the toy all night and parties loudly with it, without a rest. How did that so-called toy manage not to fall apart? Wouldn't the straws have fallen off and a patty have been smashed by then? Patrick was holding it for at least 6 hours before he brought it home. He partied with that thing all night, really? So basically he played with that thing for like 12 hours straight at least, maybe 18. Wouldn't that thing have gone badly by now? As he was beating his meat to the toy, the music was playing loud. Where on earth did he get those speakers from? Complete randomness, just like from the card from Season 6, 2008, when he had the grill. How could he even afford those without an income? The following morning, it's SpongeBob's turn to get the toy. After waking up, SpongeBob immediately goes to Patrick because he wants to see the toy that he's supposed to have for the day. Patrick, who is still having a party with the toy, refuses to come out. That's because he still wants the toy just to himself only. SpongeBob lies to force him out. Patrick lied that he was not at home just so SpongeBob can't have the toy. With that, Patrick is ordered by SpongeBob to hand over the toy because it's time to. Patrick comes up with some lame excuse. I can't! I bought it with a bull! You can't bond with a burger or an anonymous object. The next thing he says is, you can't take it! It's not fair! Bull! What do you mean it's not fair? You had the Patty Pal for the whole night! SpongeBob didn't even get it for a minute! SpongeBob, who was nice enough to make an offer that they trade every half hour, but Patrick won't budge, saying, just like a baby. What a big baby Patrick still is. Finally, they settle to trade every 1 second. Come on, that's as cheap as Mr. Krabs. 1. Time passes 1. Then Patrick can't share and runs away with it. How can Patrick go without that dumb toy? What's so great about it? For the rest of the episode, the abysmal episode, they fight over the useless toy. They pay a visit to Sandy briefly, but out of nowhere, they can't breathe due to the oxygen. That is the only time they stop fighting. Here is the end of the atrocity. Patrick screams, if I can't have it, then no one can! What does he do right after that? He eats it right in front of SpongeBob, all in one bite, which satisfies him. SpongeBob screams at the top of his lungs, no! Mr. Krabs comes out and asks what's the meaning of this. They argue who is to blame for the fight. SpongeBob wouldn't let me play with it, said Patrick. Bull! For the 3rd time. What do you mean SpongeBob won't let you play with it? You play with it all darn night. You wouldn't let SpongeBob even have a little turn. Once he gave it to you. Liar, liar, pants on fire. You play with that thing long enough, sir. You... Mr. Krabs said they should be ashamed of themselves and not to fight over a silly toy. To settle the situation, Mr. Krabs makes a great offer. By that, he gives each of them another toy because he had a whole box of them. However, Mr. Krabs does not do as he says because he says that'll be $13.50 each. What? That's a ripoff! And Patrick, why does he get another toy? He ate the toy which SpongeBob couldn't have. What should cost no more than $4 or $5? All those were Krabby Patties with condiments on it, nothing else. Those are not toys for the very last time. I'm not going to repeat myself. That thing is not a toy. It's food, and they'll spoil after 6 hours because it will have been time temperature abused. By that time, Mr. Krabs should have just given SpongeBob one and nothing for Patrick because Patrick just ate his. He didn't even listen to SpongeBob's story. That was the truth. Yeah, what's sad is Mr. Krabs did nothing to settle the situation right away. Patrick steals SpongeBob's wallet saying it's all on me. Patrick, that's my money. Haven't you learned nothing about sharing? Patrick, sir, you have not learned nothing about sharing. What do you mean SpongeBob learned nothing about sharing? That's a fat lie. This bad episode shows Patrick's arrogance at its peak. Not only does it show how rude Patrick is, it shows how much of a cheapskate Mr. Krabs is. Why wouldn't he charge SpongeBob that much money over a stinking Patty Pal? Plus, he even charged him when it was supposed to come with the kids' meal. Patrick is so arrogant, extremely arrogant, and learned nothing about sharing. Absolutely nothing. Nope, zilch nada. As for the Patty Pal, it was nothing but a piece of junk that should have been eaten immediately with the meal. This is a very well demonstrative example of how Mr. Krabs is so stingy and Patrick is so arrogant, making me want to destroy something. That is how bad this episode was. No lessons learned, none at all. This was supposed to teach a lesson about sharing, but just taught a lesson about being a jerk. Patrick is still arrogant at the end, so he hasn't learned a thing. Now it's time for the worst SpongeBob episode, second edition. This abysmal episode was very close to numbers 3 and 2, but has been finally chosen after looking at parts of the episode. It has been chosen to be, drumroll please, not from November 2011 and from many poorly executed episodes from 2008. Pet Sitter Pat, once again, an episode from Pat's Poor Excuse Behavior. That could have been 2 or 3 on the list, but was reconsidered from looking back at everything from the beginning to end. Here's how the episode starts out. The meal arrives at SpongeBob's house. SpongeBob gets a letter from his grandma. The letter says he's invited to his grandma's birthday. She's turning even older. What? Were the writers too thoughtless to come up with an actual age? Oh, come on. SpongeBob trips over Gary, realizing that he'll be left alone and needs someone to watch after him while he's away. The first person he asks is Squidward, who refuses to babysit Gary because he ruined his kelp garden from eating it. The next person he asks is best friend, butt buddy, Patrick. Apparently, Patrick was talking to his best friend named, what was it? It was a puddle named Funny. Patrick agrees to take good care of Gary. SpongeBob explains what must be done, but Patrick is so ignorant that he thinks he knows everything, which he doesn't. Not only that, he ignores everything that SpongeBob said was important. He even had the nerve to say that he was the most responsible guy that SpongeBob knew. Bull. All he did was eat those fattening coral bits when he was supposed to be listening to his best friend. With that, he rushes SpongeBob out the door. After that, he offers Gary for a walk, but is ever so distracted with his upset tummy. He must have eaten way too many fattening coral bits. Well, he's obese after all. For the rest of the afternoon, he's in the bathroom doing who knows what, probably beating his meat the entire time. When it's dusk, let's see, where was I? For the entire time, when it's dusk, Patrick finally feels well. He spent that much time in the bathroom. Gosh, how sick is he? All he thinks about is himself. By that time, Gary is starving because he has not eaten all day. Patrick was so worried about his fat belly that he forgot all about poor Gary. Not to mention that he was so brainless that he ate all the snail food right in front of Gary without even considering that Gary was starving. In other words, he didn't even feed Gary one bit. So Gary's still going to starve. Back at Grandma's house, SpongeBob gets a gelatin bowl of Gary that his grandma made for him because he loves sweets. That makes him worried, making him call Patrick, who is supposed to be looking after Gary, which he isn't. Gary is supposed to have a bath. Patrick thinks Gary stinks, but it's Patrick that stinks because of his smelly armpits. That must have been due to poor personal hygiene, which doesn't surprise me. Patrick uses his snail food as soap. When Gary tries to eat it, Patrick says, "No, Gary, we don't eat the bath, we get in it." That angers Gary and he runs away. Patrick goes after him. He throws the TV, which breaks. SpongeBob calls him once again, but he won't listen to a thing he has to say. Well, just because he never ever does. Out of nowhere, Patrick shows Gary, guess what it is? What seems to be a flamethrower. Well, what the? A flamethrower? Really? Seriously, a flamethrower? Where on earth did he get that lethal weapon from? Get rid of it. That's dangerous, extremely dangerous. Gosh, does Patrick have common sense? He's going to get someone killed one of these days. He tried to kill Gary. Gary runs away, but Patrick goes after him, saying, "If you can't come to the bat, then the bat's going to come to you." That was one of the only two good lines in the whole episode. I guess it was funny. That makes a huge mess. Patrick was way too lazy to clean it up, so he doesn't have a clue what's going on. He drives Gary in a way that hurts him very badly. So Gary's eaten, had his bath, time to watch the TV. Which is broken. No, just no. Wrong. Bull. What do you mean he's eaten? Gary the snail was not eaten because Patrick starved him. Then Patrick falls asleep. Meanwhile, the running water that was left on due to Patrick's irresponsibility floods the entire house. That quick? Really? Patrick assumes that it's another bath that Gary wanted. No, it's not. It's all your fault for your irresponsibility. Can't you see what you've done already? You flooded the entire house. Back at Grandma's house, SpongeBob has a cake for his grandma. Of course, because it's a birthday after all. SpongeBob thinks the house is going to burn down. He calls for Patrick for the third consecutive time, thinking that those two are in danger. SpongeBob puts his grandma to bed because he's tired and runs back to his house to see what's really going on, only to find out that Gary was reading a bedtime story to Patrick, who was sleeping the whole time because he's just a lazy fat thing that does nothing all day long. He's basically just a grasshopper. Despite all the serious damage that he has done to the house, SpongeBob is happy to see that Gary is doing well. Patrick can't believe that what Gary was reading to him is snail tales to him. The end. All three of these episodes were on the positions, all due to Patrick's bad behavior. Not only did Patrick destroy a bunch of SpongeBob's property, which was like worth $1,000 or even more, he almost killed Gary. He didn't feed or walk Gary. He didn't even follow a single instruction that he was given. He didn't listen to a darn tootin' thing that SpongeBob had to say. That all shows that Patrick can't do anything right. All he did this entire episode was make things worse than ever by destroying everything in sight. How is Gary not starving for the rest of the episode? I would be. Why on earth was he even reading a bedtime story to Patrick after all he had done to him? This doesn't make sense. How could they have been out of the flood that fast? Why didn't SpongeBob just eat the cake at all? How did he not see all the damage? This second time we've seen Patrick act like a smart aleck to even know his own best friends. That's all I have to say for this entire video. There's just so much to talk about for these abysmal episodes. I'm very sorry for going on, but there was just a lot to cover because there was so much to rant on. That's all I have to say for this video, or rant. There may be another countdown, so stay tuned for updates. Good night.